Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host. And my co-host is not here today. I'm sitting here with Mara spinning the dials, and it's interview day. Excuse me. It's interview day today. We have a special guest, but before we bring him on, Miss Mara, do you have any announcements today?
I do. Our Sage Group signups ends tomorrow, and there's still 21 spaces available.
Wow. So how many spaces in general do we have?
Two. I can tell you exactly.
200 or 300 or something?
Yeah, it was 287 total slots.
If you're on your Bhakti path, you like how it's going, and you feel like, okay, where can I take this to the next step? Maybe you're new to this, maybe you're hearing it on a podcast for the first time, but we have these things called Sage Groups. I'm just going to share quickly that people get together from our community and they just share what they're going through. There's usually a theme, something we talk about during the week. People find it a really good way to connect with people. I call it the spiritual modern version of having a pen pal. And it's got great success so far. So there is a few spaces left, and the fee is quite reasonable. It's only $995 for the first 3 days, and then it goes up to $10,000. Just kidding. The whole darn thing is free. It's free, and people love it, and it's transformative, and we get nothing but positive feedback. We're not trying to sell you anything except good company. So if you haven't joined a Sage Group, go to our website, wisdomofthesages.com, sign up there. While I'm at it, hey, we have our Wisdom of the Sages retreat on Columbus Day weekend. Please show up for it if you want. Another chance to come in contact with people, meet cool people, eat great food, sing great songs. We do it all at Super Soul Farm. Mara's going to be there. Kostuba's going to be there. And a lot of our regulars are going to be there. All right.
That's October 11th through 13th, and people can register at wisdomofthesages.com.
Great. So our special guest today is honored to call him an old friend of mine. But he's more of a teacher of mine. So I will say he's friendly to me. But Edwin Bryant, Professor Edwin Bryant, received his PhD in Indic languages and cultures from Columbia University, where his thesis culminated in his first book, The Quest for the Origins of Vedic Culture, Oxford University Press. That was in 2001. He taught Hinduism at Harvard University for 3 years and is presently the professor of Hinduism at Rutgers University, where he teaches courses on Hindu philosophy and religion. He has published 8 books. Man, I was getting so arrogant about me publishing a book. He's published 8 books and authored a number of articles on the earliest origins of the Vedic culture, yoga philosophy, and the Krishna tradition. These include Penguin World Classics translation of the story of Krishna's incarnation from its traditional source, the Srimad Bhagwatam Purana. That's what we study every day. As a personal practitioner of Bhakti for over 45 years, a number of them spent in India studying with traditional teachers, where he returns yearly, Edwin strives to combine academic scholarship and rigor with appreciation towards traditional knowledge systems. Professor Bryant, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raghu. Jai Sri Krishna. Pleasure to be here. You're all looking great, and yeah, you're doing great stuff. So nice to see your radio show is ongoing. It's been a few years now, I think.
We can't stop. It keeps going, and it keeps morphing. Started off as a podcast, has turned into more of a community of people. We have these Sage Groups, we have retreats, we have pilgrimages, and we're trying to develop it more and more. But I will say, very, very inspired and impressed and excited that you agreed to come on the show again. I find you to be one of the few people that I can shut up for and just listen, which is rare because I shut up for very few people in this world. And besides being learned and being having wisdom, which people really need in this time, day and age. I find you very entertaining and fun to be around. So it's glad to have you on the show, because I think a big part of teaching is the way you disseminate that knowledge, and you do it with wit and vulnerability. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Raghu. That's quite a litany of compliments, and likewise, I have great regard for you and your service. So yeah, let's hope we can keep doing this until our hair gets whiter and whiter still, and then eventually falls out, and then there'll be the teeth. They'll start getting wobbly, and let's hope we can still keep speaking and sharing the Bhagwatam, and until we croak. And then let's hope we can croak the Bhagwatam, our last breaths
Our last croak
in our mortal frames.
Oh yeah, I hope it will be. I had a story of when I first got into bhakti. I was at a farm community, and I was with a family, a mother and a father, and two, under non-teenage kids, like 8 and 10. And I was brand new bhakti, and we were chanting, driving through the windy roads of West Virginia, and all of a sudden, this deer popped out. We were all chanting japa, even the kids, and the deer popped out of nowhere, and everyone just said at the exact same time, Krishna, except me. Well, where I just said some horrible curse. And I was just reflecting about what's going through my mind and what was going through their mind. So yeah, I'm praying that we can croak something transcendental. And maybe you can
that was how many years ago? That
What's
was how many years ago? That was how many years ago? 30
That was
years ago?
37 years ago, maybe.
So the whole point of sadhana is that if we keep repeating the name every day during japa, then that Krishna samskara becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until it becomes a massive, great big cluster of samskaras. Because at the moment of death, the things that are most important to us rise into our minds when the body's falling apart, right? We can't breathe, we're choking, we got tubes going into our arms. So at that moment, what do we cling on to? We're going to cling on to the sort of the strongest, the most powerful samskara, and that's going to be the one that we've developed in life. So sadhana is all about having that Krishna samskara there, which you didn't have 35 years ago because you hadn't really started your life of sadhana. But by now, I'm sure that at that pivotal moment, the great transit, the Upanishads call it that great transit, that we cling on to that most powerful, most practiced, most consistently practiced samskara, the name of Krishna.
That's so good to hear. And I didn't realize you wrote that many books. I'm very impressed. Can you tell me, and they're very scholarly books. What would you say are some great takeaways if you had to put it in a nutshell? If you are actually old, we're not fully old yet. We're just older. But if we are fully old and you're disseminating some information, or you're telling a teenager, here is the important things you should take away. Do you have something that we can hold on to?
In terms of literature?
No, in terms of a life lesson, that could be like something you'd give to your son on your deathbed, something like that. There's a lot of reading out there. So what would you extract from that reading that could be very practical and useful for us today perhaps on our material life and our spiritual life?
Sure. Well, in terms of the material life, that everything is temporary, and therefore everything is unfulfilling. And that's the first noble truth of Buddhism. And it's, I think, the pivotal verse in the Yoga Sutras. It's right there in the Gita, dukkha alaya mashashvatam. So that from a point of view of material life, I would say, pay attention to your quest for happiness in the material world. And even as you're out there striving to find happiness, keep a little bit of a wisdom, a buddhi, a wisdom sort of witness, and be honest with yourself, and recognize that nothing really truly fulfills and satisfies in the deep sort of way that our heart craves for. And notice that continues to be the case, continues to be the case, continues to be the case. And at a certain point, when that continuum has, 10, 20, 30 years, then then at least consider, the teachings of our tradition, which is that's the very nature of material existence. It can never satisfy. So that would be my material kind of little tidbit. The first noble truth of Buddhism, 2 words, sarvam dukkam. Same 2 words in Patanjali, sarvam dukkam. Everything's unfulfilling materially. And then from a spiritual point of view is latch on to Bhagavan, and I think the Bhakti Narada Sutra gives like a quintessential definition of bhakti. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And when you forget, lament in the sense of thinking, God, I spent a whole day and I didn't think of Bhagavan even once. So that seems to be the essence of it all. Raghu, what would you say? What have you distilled?
What have I distilled? Thanks for asking. Yes.
Yeah.
Keeping that as a meditation. Yeah, sort of as you were saying, like
If
everything.
if you're on your deathbed and your son or somebody approached you and you had 5 minutes left to live and you've just had enough prana to share one set of statements to your beloved, you're leaving the world, you never see that beloved son or beloved person again, what would be that final soundbite?
Okay. Framing it out like that, I would push it to exactly what you said towards the end, that Krishna is actually your best friend. Krishna is your greatest lover. Krishna is your source. Krishna is your joy. In any sadness in this world, expect it. Turn all your love over to Krishna, and he'll protect you. I think it would be something like that. If I had longer, I'd sort of like tease that out a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you had a little bit longer, you'd read the whole Bhagavata Purana. That would take you a year or two. So that means that you wouldn't be on your deathbed at that point.
Yes, yes. Speaking about remembering Krishna, are you celebrating Janmashtami tomorrow?
I've become very hermetic, and I pretty much a solo kind of. I'm a solo Bhagavata, bhakta or aspiring one, and because my house is such massive disorder right now, and
Sure.
I'm leaving the country the day after tomorrow, I'll just do something very simple. I have some fruit in the garden that is pure organic fruit, and I will do a little offering. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not near a temple. I'm in the middle of nowhere, so it'll be very personal and very just me and Bhagavan, and I relish that. I foresee that as being my future anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
We're both
You're going to do
very
an
public
extravaganza.
people. I was going to do nothing. And then I was like, no, I should go to New York. And Kostuba was encouraging me to go to New York where it's really festive. Truthfully, sometimes when it's very festive, I feel less connected to God. I don't know why, but it's because maybe I'm just in a social mood or maybe I'm ego driven. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's these alone moments. But on the 11th hour, we decided just to invite people over. So we're going to have we're just going to read and sing, and that's going to be it. Just reading and singing for a few hours. Yeah.
Very nice. You see Hermeticism in the future, or do you always see yourself as being socially active and having, these kinds of community kind of get-togethers and the farm and the sort of creating these opportunities, or do you find your inclinations as you're becoming older towards solitude and Hermeticism?
I feel like
see a trajectory at all in your life, your devotional life, heading in a particular direction? I'm interviewing you, by the way, in case I didn't tell you.
I'm picking up on that. I was like, I'm going to manipulate this whole interview to be about me again, aren't I? I want to die preaching. That's I say that's spreading the glories of Krishna. I wouldn't mind dying like that. That being said, because I find it incredibly joyful, and I find it keeps me in my best consciousness. That being said, there is sections of me that are pulling back a little bit. And truthfully, I could probably see perhaps if I actually don't there's a lot of ways to die. You could just one day die or get run over by a car or like attacked by packs of dogs. I've thought about it all. All these things can happen to me when you least expect it. or I can die like through old age and one day it's just obvious, like, okay, he's about to die. So I could see if I do that path, I could see myself winding down to be a little bit more private. But I feel like
Sure.
if I've got energy in this body, at least that's what I find my duty to be. But I find that I have a desire to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more insular, and I find sort of great joy in that as well, which I didn't previously. I really felt like I didn't appreciate the value of being with yourself and with God.
Sure. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I'm a party person, and Krishna consciousness is.
Oh,
I would
no,
be like kicked out of every Buddhist temple. I think I'm not sure if they party as much as we do in bhakti. Um,
yeah.
what to
Oh, you
speak of
found
the
so you found your you know the cultural a cultural situation that's appropriate for you.
Yeah, I don't think as a Mona Bubba, were these people who don't speak? Have you ever met one of them?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of Babas in even in Brindavan. There's all kinds of there's Hermetic characters. I mean, the Bhakti tradition can encompass anything. Can encompass magnificent temples with huge crowds on Janmashtami to solitary Mona Babas, in Govardhan and so forth.
Yeah,
So really, those are just different modes of fixing the mind on Bhagavan. As long as you fix the mind on Bhagavan, people's natures are different, and also the stages of life are different, Raghu. Right? Even
yeah,
in the classical Varnashram, the stages of life themselves, transform our personalities and our ambitions and goals. And the end, it does become more contemplative and meditative, even in the Varnashram system.
sure.
So there you are. Yeah. And I got 10
Especially
years on you, my friend. I got 10 years on you. How
you
old are
got.
you?
I'm 58.
Well, you have to give me the namahar. You have to give me the aap in Hindi, the polite form. I'm 10 years on you. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Well,
67. But anyway, yeah,
you're 67. Okay.
around 60, things I've found things change. A lot of people find 60 is kind of a kind of a milestone where the body starts you start realizing that it's not just that this thing's happening in the body or you've got an ache there. You start realizing this is age,
Yeah.
and you get this realization, and and then all of a sudden you wonder how the hell you wonder how were you able to do everything you were doing even 10 years ago. You were like, how was I packing that into a day? So
Mm,
things change, and we're forced to change by our very physiology. We're forced to change. So there must be something in nature itself that is propelling us towards slowing down and a more contemplative life towards the end, because the very physiology, the very body is set up for that.
mm. Yeah, witnessing your own body change, witnessing your little kids' bodies grow and their desires and how they were so needy on you, and now they're sort of like doing their own thing. That's also helps me sort of it helps me sort of let go as well. Um, whew. But definitely even the
But
passions.
you still get a phone call every couple of months for like a rent check and stuff like that, right? So there's still that important connection with the kids. But anyway, yeah, on to
Yeah,
matters more serious. So let's talk about the Bhagavata, or what would you like to talk about?
yeah, let's talk about the Bhagavatam. Tell me, why do you love why do you love the Srimad Bhagavatam? You studied so many books. Why is the Bhagavatam so special for not just for you, but for all people? Why is it an important book to read?
The Mahabharata makes this claim that what is found anywhere else is to be found in the Mahabharata. And in
Hmm.
the Mahabharata, there are things to be found that are not found anywhere else, which, is quite a grand statement to make. But let us recall that Vyas, when he's sitting on the banks at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the banks of the whatever it was, the Sarasvati, is despondent, and he's written the Mahabharata, he's written all the Dharma Shastras, he's divided the one Veda into 4, he's divided the old Purana into 18. He has a whole school of disciples, you know, Romaharshana and all of these that are working on the different Puranas. He's done all of this, and the tradition would even say, which of course academics could never accept because of, you know, chronologically, but tradition says he even wrote the commentary on the Yoga Sutras. He's done all of this and he's despondent, and he's written the Mahabharata, which has this grand claim of containing everything. And Narada comes down and says, well, the cause of your despondency is you think you've done everything, including this grand Mahabharata with its, you know, this great claim it makes, but yet you haven't really described the pastimes of Bhagavan. And then Vyas writes the Bhagwatam. So in the Bhagwatam, that's where we have Braj Leela. That's where we have the Gopal that we fall in love with. In the Mahabharata, you have a Harivamsa, but it's a very different kind of Krishna. It's you know, it's a lineage that Krishna story has been handed down in a different sort of lineage. You don't have the Leela, so in the same sort of way. You don't have the rasas and the bhavs and the Harivamsa. But in the Bhagavatam, the first, I would say 30 chapters, though that's the Krishna that's Gopal. That's little Gopal Krishna. So that makes the Bhagavatam the crown jewel of Vedic literature on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's got very, you know, I'm a Jnani. I mean, you know, some of us have, you know, strong Jnana inclinations. You know, we love Gopal, and of course he's in our heart, but you know, we also have this kind of intellectual need for Jnana. The Bhagavatam is an extraordinarily sophisticated Jnana text. It has powerful Jnana teachings on, you know, Jnana meaning, you know, you're not the body or the Atma and the temporality of the world, but really delivered in a sort of very, very powerful sort of way. And I could just, you know, I get tired of the Yoga Sutras. I get, you know, Mahabharata, read it, you know, you get your hairs bristle when you read, you know, heroism and then the Kshatriya Bhava, you know, again, that makes the hair rise. All of that's fantastic stuff, but nothing, you know, and the Upanishads are kind of cool, and they're, you know, they're nice to read. They're ancient, and, you know, these ancient rishis and the way they express themselves very different from latest literature. All of that's fantastic stuff, but there's nothing like the Bhagavatam in terms of penetrative power. In other words, those words enter the heart and inspire the practitioner, both on a Jnana level, you know, to renounce the world and become detached, and on the Bhakti level to then become attached to little Lala Gopal Ji.
So, but what about the other Puranas? There's 18 Puranas. They all tell so many fascinating stories about gods, goddesses, Vishnu. Are they as attractive? And if not, why not? Or are they more penetrating? Or if not, why not?
Yeah, I think, you know, I can only speak as a Krishna Bhakta, but I think we make a mistake if we think that there, you know, first of all, we disrespect Bhagavan if we disrespect the other forms of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan has this infinity of forms that manifest in order to attract people of different dispositions and different inclinations and different bhavs. And so the attraction that we feel for me, it's Lala Gopal. We have to respect and accept that others feel for the great Lord Shiva, for the great Dev, the forms of Devi, for these other forms of Ishvara and Ishvari. So I can only speak for myself. You know, it's like falling in love. Somebody says, well, why did you fall in love with that person, right? You could have done so much better, or you could have married into this, married into that, or you could have, you know. But what can you tell them? You know, you fall in love. It's transrational. It's a transrational thing that happens to the heart. So bhakti is transrational, and you fall in love. And so I would have to say that the other Puranas, for me, even the Vishnu Purana, which is actually, it's you know, a table of contents are almost the same as the Bhagavata, but it's you know, it doesn't have the same. First of all, it's not so literally exquisite. The Bhagavatam literarily is exquisitely written. It doesn't have that sophistication of writing. But for me, even the Vishnu, it doesn't make me want to, you know, really reconnect deeply to my practice. It doesn't make me, it doesn't inspire my heart in the same sort of way. I read it just to sort of, be aware of its contents in a more sort of academic sort of way. So the other Puranas, you're asking the question for me, are fantastic. I love the idea that all these forms are there. I think we should give up this. Even language of Supreme Personality of Godhead, frankly, between you and me, I don't think is helpful, because these forms are all eternal, and it's not useful to go about banging people, brandishing this sign that our form is the supreme causal form of all forms. Fine, the acharyas can do that, but if you're in love with another form, that form is the cause of all causes. It's the Supreme Personality for you. And that could be Shiva, that could be Devi, that could be Kali, whatever it is. So the Puranas, the wonderful thing about bhakti, in it's not one size fits all. As other monotheistic traditions, it's one size fits all. You either buy into a particular manifestation of Godhead, and that's it. You don't have any choice. In Hinduism, you have this fantastic variety. Even the body burners in Varanasi, they have their form of Lord Shiva, and no one else is allowed to worship him. He belongs to the body burners, and they're his form, and they're very possessive. This is our, but you put us down low on the social, you stick your nose up at us, you think we're contaminated, you think we're outcasts. Well, we have our Bhagavan, he belongs to us, and nobody else has the right to worship him. And that possessiveness is their love. It's a wonderful thing about Hinduism. There's a form of Ishvara for every single community. And those stories are represented in the Puranas, the Mahapuranas, the great 18 Mahapuranas, and then the 18 Upa minor Puranas. All those stories come from there. So for me, Bhagavata Purana, that's through whatever destiny, past life, grace of Guru, that in my own heart, I have a hopefully unflinching connection with that. But for others, we should let us honor and not only honor, but encourage. If someone has a partiality to Shiva, encourage them, guide them to go read the Shiva Purana, go read the Linga Purana, go read the Skanda Purana, go read the Shaiva Puranas. That's our beloved Ishvara. How can we somehow denigrate or even just ignore the fact that our Bhagavan manifests in these different ways? How can we in any way belittle that? What do you say, Raghu?
Yeah, I guess there are probably people teaching these lineages. I'd be just careful like who you direct them to, because I'm not sure. All I know is what I know, and so I don't know. And I'm sure there's a lot of Krishna schools out there that maybe be a little bit philosophically off or philosophically deviant or have some crazy guru. I'm very grateful. I fell in love with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's teachings made sense to me. So if someone was saying, I want to worship Shiva or Devi, I wouldn't even quite know where to direct them to find a more authentic school of Devi worship. Oftentimes you get some person who claims they're into one of these demigods, and this is what Devi's about. It's about embracing your own personal feminine, and it's not about this patriarchal world we live in. And so they sort of like co-opt a deity, a Hindu deity, and throw an Isis in there and try to make it their own thing. So I'd be careful to just sort of like, I'm leaning towards that. I'm going to go into that direction. But I do understand what you're saying. I just wouldn't know how to direct them. Sometimes people come to me and say, I'm attracted to this particular mantra. And it could be any type of, mantra, Buddhist mantra, Devi mantra, Shiva mantra. What I say is, all I can do is the mantras have potency when they're given by a teacher who understands their purport. I don't understand the purport to those mantras. I can give you the Hare Krishna mantra and I can explain the purport to that. I don't try to like convince them otherwise, because like you said, it's an affair of the heart. It's, what was the word you used? Transrational. It's love. And therefore I can just share the love I have.
Yeah. But, ultimately it comes down to sincerity, Raghu. If people are sincere, they will make a connection with genuine teachers, and whether that be Shaiva teachers or any other kind of teachers, and all these other traditions, even the much and think and I mean, one could just as easily be cheated within ISKCON. Think of all
Sure.
the gurus. Think of all the gurus that have fallen, something like 90%. So I don't feel that anybody in ISKCON has any very strong grounds for then criticizing other deviant, shall we say, teachers, because the same problems and phenomena have been very much a part of the historical ISKCON lineage. So I would say that
That's a good point.
if you're really truly sincere, you surrender to Ishvara, and Ishvara, if you're 100% sincere, Ishvara will guide you to a bona fide guide, whether that be in the Krishna tradition or a Shaiva tradition or anybody else. So really, it's a matter of sincerity. And if people are not sincere, then they're going to get cheated wherever you send them. They're going to want, they want some material desire satisfied, or they really have some kind of material idea of the guru is going to be someone that's going to flatter them or some massage their ego or somehow bolster, enhance their material life, then they're going to end up with somebody like that. So I would suggest, if someone's attracted to a mantra or another form, a mantra is a form of Ishvara. So if they're attracted to a mantra, first of all, explain to them that that mantra is a sonic avatara. It's mantra avatara of a form of Ishvara. And so it's Nama, Rupa, Lila, Guna. That form has activities, has a shape, has a form, it interacts with the world in a certain sort of way, has qualities. It's not just the mantra. That mantra is just one part of that package. I would advise them to explore that whole package, but most of all, simply be genuinely sincere and 100% honest, and examine their own sincerity, and Ishvara will then guide them. It's not you or me that's going to guide them. It's going to be Ishvara that will come and capture their hearts, whether it be in the form of Lala Gopal or some other form. I just think we need to be a lot less sectarian in the Gaudiya tradition in general, and that, and especially those of us that are interacting in the broader yoga community, where people are coming for all kinds of backgrounds, they've had all kinds of different experiences, they've made all kinds of different connections. Ultimately, they're going to be attracted, if they see our love and our dedication, and they're going to say, I want some of that. But otherwise, Ishvara has many forms, and it's a beautiful thing.
Great answer. Thank you. Makes sense. I can't quote where this is from, and maybe you can. That the mantra has no efficacy unless it's given by a guru. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, there's a verse that says, it's Sampradaya Vinita, mantra Nispala, that the outside of the Sampradaya Vinita, something like that, mantra Nispala Bhavata, something like that. These kinds of statements are you often one-off statements. If you think there's 400,000 verses in the Purana, there's 100,000 verses in the Mahabharata, it's 500,000 right there. Then you've got all the other texts, and then the commentaries, you've got millions and millions and millions of lines, and then you find this sort of, even the whole idea of the four Sampradayas, Raghu, it's not in the Bhagwatam, it's one verse in the Vishnu Purana. So it's very, for me, maybe I've become very broad-minded, because of whatever, being an academe and being sort of mostly teaching, not so much association with the Gaudiya traditions, except for my very best friends. But that kind of a statement, I find it's very hard for me. I don't reject it. It's very hard for me to put my heart into it, because I believe in sincerity, and that Bhagavan will accept any mantra offered with sincerity. So to think that there's some technical process, some technical lineage, that if you don't receive, it sounds a little political to me, frankly. It sounds a little bit about power. It sounds about, okay, you have to receive the mantra in this specific lineage because my guru comes in this lineage. It sounds a little suspect to me. And if it's true, namaha, that's fine. but I certainly don't promote that. I don't quote that verse. It doesn't speak to me. It doesn't touch my heart. And it doesn't sound like the kind of bhakti that an all-loving, beautiful little Lala Gopal, I don't think is going to be a kind of a bureaucrat in that sort of a way. So again, I'm not dismissing it, but I am saying it's not, you don't find it, repeated all over the place. It's mentioned once, as far as I know, and it's not our Bhagavata text doesn't say that. It does talk about, I don't think the Bhagavatam doesn't mention the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. I think that comes from the Padma Purana, but we can be corrected on that. We can look that up in Wiki. So those kinds of, even if they're true, I find them sectarian, unhelpful. I find they put people off. I find they make us a little bit elitist. They make us a little bit judgmental. They make us feel privileged, and they're not helpful to the spiritual life. Spiritual life is humility and surrender to the lotus feet of Bhagavan. So I hope that maybe that wasn't the answer you were hoping for, but that's my feelings right now.
I think my question was because I didn't quite have an answer. I didn't quite have an answer for that one. For me, I always thought, well, the mantra has more efficacy if it's explained why you're chanting this mantra. Like if I ask you, why do we chant Hare Krishna? What does that mean? So I thought that because then you can chant it with an appropriate intention. That's what I thought it meant. Not that it has to be sort of like.
Sure.
What's that?
Anyone can explain it. Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but anyone can explain the mantra is Bhagavan. The mantra is a sonic avatar. It's Nam avatar, and it's quite straightforward. It's quite simple. There's nothing theologically complicated about it. It is Bhagavan in the form of sound. So if we then, which means what? Which means we can surrender to the mantra in the same way you can surrender to the Murti in the temple, and you can surrender. In other words, you can surrender your whole mind, your heart, your ego. Surrender it all to the name. That's the meaning of the mantra. It is non-different from Bhagavan. There's nothing theologically complicated about that. And it doesn't seem to me that is some kind of a secret that has to be handed down in some very specifically defined Sampradaic lineage. So I maybe these statements are meant to, create some kind of a safeguard. At least the lineages are ancient and they're protective, and we know we're following in the footsteps of great beings when we connect to these lineages. I'm all for all of that. I'm not dissing the whole thing, but but when it starts to become too restrictive and too absolutist, that nothing other than something received in the lineage is somehow inefficient, it doesn't have efficacy, at that point, I can't accept that.
Okay.
It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to resonate with the heart of bhakti, which is simply about sincere, devotional surrender to someone that has captured your heart. In our case, it's little Lala Gopal.
So I had this brings me to something we were talking about yesterday, and you were mentioning earlier you want to pick some fruits or some vegetables in your garden, offer them to your deity, and there's something wonderful about growing the food for the deity. So there's something nice about preparing the food for your deity, and there's something nice about honoring, and there's spiritual benefit because they're all meditations. And we were talking about art. There's something special about, someone asked the question about AI art. And nowadays with AI art, they can mix things that don't belong together. You can have Vishnu with Radharani, and they'll just put it in, and people who don't know the rasa bas or the mixing of different rasas, they'll just put things together like that. And you see sometimes AI art, which is sort of out there. And sometimes you'll see also people who are not devotees of Krishna, but they're just sort of painters selling art as well. Maybe even poster art. And then we're talking about kirtan. If there's people who don't necessarily, they just like kirtan. Here's the question. Do you get more benefit hearing a great soul chanting kirtan? Or is it the intention of the hearer that makes the benefit? So anybody could be anybody could be, like, for example, if I'm looking at a piece of art that wasn't painted by a devotee, but it's Krishna, is there more benefit if it's painted by a great artist, or is it just up to me and what I'm consuming through my senses? Does that make sense?
That's a really good question, Raghu. That's a really good question. I would, you just caught me off the cuff. So let me say something, and maybe I have to rewind it and fix it. But I would say definitely that's coming from a great, that bhav, the mantra's coming from because the mind because words are a verbalization of the mind stuff. Mind stuff is vritti. So a great mahant, a great sage whose vrittis, whose mind is completely absorbed in Bhagavan, that mindset, that love is simply transformed from mental stuff into sonic stuff, into the vibration of air. But so it's still imbued with that same love, and it enters the ear of the hearer, and it touches the heart. So there's no question about that. That the hearing this from a great soul is going to be far more transformative than, in fact, it can be, for a devotee. Devotee doesn't particularly like sitting in a professional, some professional, performer that clearly there's a lot of ego in the performance.
Mm.
Having said that, if one is an advanced a bhakta, and that wouldn't be me, it might be you. But if one is a very advanced bhakta, you see Krishna everywhere, right? That's the Uttama Adhikari. You see Krishna everywhere. So you could hear the name Krishna coming, a piece of art that's completely hybrid, that's hippieized, that has no theological background to it, but there's a flute and a peacock feather and that will just trigger Bob, like the gopis. They even see a bee. They see a bee and they're triggered. So I think for advanced devotees, both is the case. But for neophyte devotees, I think it's advantageous for them to somehow, get the association of somebody who is, deeply, deeply, deeply a deep lover of Krishna. So, that answer can go both ways. I mean, it depends on how you looked at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There must be some dissemination of that transcendental sound from the great soul, just hearing that or being around that.
And instead of hippie kirtans, I mean, I used to take a very orthodox attitude and frown in it, stick my nose up and think I was better because I had some traditional learning. But now I think, not everything, but most of it's all good. I mean, as long as the lineages, there is a role for lineages. I just resist lineages when they start getting exclusivistic and saying that anybody outside, the mantra is not efficacious. I'm going to push back on that. But the lineages, as long as we perpetuate these lineages, and then, the hippy dippy kirtans are going on in the yoga studio next door, it's all good. People that are sincere, they're going to want to, at some point, they're maybe not going to be so satisfied with the hippy dippy kirtan, and they're going to seek something a little, if their sincerity is there, they will be guided, and then perhaps they will encounter lineages with people that are really, really following. I mean, lineage, what is lineage? You're following footsteps. It's a type of security. It's a type of safeguard. Things being watered down and mixed to a point where the spiritual element becomes, non-existent. So lineage is a preservative. It's kind of a preservative. And as long as the lineages are, alive and intact, and you have orthodox, there's always going to be a tension between orthodox and liberal, even within a lineage.
Sure.
There's going to be the orthodox, kind of contingent. You need to wrap this up.
No. I'm just, my internet was not working, so I was wondering if we have to turn people's cameras off, because that sometimes takes away a little of the juice.
Yeah. So yeah, I would.
Sorry,
I don't
keep
know.
going.
I guess we're all hybrids, Raghu. We're all hybrids, and I think that maybe a good place to be is orthodox in your own practice and liberal in your teaching. And may I say one thing?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, but please say more than one thing.
Can I make a suggestion which may not go down very well?
Sure, especially if it's a suggestion for me. You can.
It's for everybody. Can we eliminate the word preaching from our vocabulary? Because first of all, it carries a lot of negative baggage from other types of missionary activity, which have really messed up world cultures over the last 200-300 years, number one. Number two, there's a presumptuousness about it. that somehow can lead to ego on the behalf of the person, the so-called preacher. There's a presumption that the people being preached to are in some sort of way needy or inferior. It's a very short step from, you know, sharing knowledge then to thinking that other people are somehow inferior and developing and everyone's a karmi if they're not a devotee. So there's you know, you can end up in a highly judgmental kind of mindset that it's very difficult to shake off. So I would suggest I don't even use the term teacher anymore, because there's even a little bit of that power imbalance and presumptuousness. When I think for myself now, the safest kind of language to use is reading the texts with fellow students.
I like that. I
You
like
know,
that. I said preach
sharing
today,
with
so I'm going to take this one personally. You know, I went through a whole period where I never said that word because I felt the same way. And then I just flipped it back and we're like, I'm preaching the gospel of the Bhagavad Gita. And so, yeah, I think that but it does come with all the baggage of conquistadors and people have come to India and tried to convert people. I like the concept of we don't convert because we're all spirit souls anyway. The texts are there and the mantras are there and the sadhana bhakti is there to help us remember just what we forgot. But I like that. Studying.
Yeah.
How did you put it again? What's the phrase? Studying with your students?
Sharing the sacred texts, you know, and obviously some of us have been doing it a lot longer. And so naturally, you know, we have more experience with the text, but that's all. It's like any field of knowledge, you know, someone has been doing it for longer, they have more experience. So it's natural that they have, you know, more familiarity with the text. Anyway,
I'm sure we borrowed that. I'm sure we borrowed that word in all the translations because, you know, from Christianity and Islam, that they were preachers and they were preachers oftentimes, sometimes with sweetness and sometimes with a sword. Perhaps there was a different word in Sanskrit or in Vedic culture.
You have the word prachar, right? But it's not the same. You know, people they didn't convert. If you read the stories, you know, Shankara went, you know, they had debates, but those were debates between intellectuals. So Shankara debated, so there were debates between the schools, and that kept them healthy, kept them vigorous, kept them, you know, aware of their intellectual landscape. But there wasn't really this conversion. I mean, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a little bit of an anomaly there, but you know, I don't know about converting. He just went around chanting and melting people's hearts. I don't know if that would fit into, you know, our notion of preaching. You know, he just was an amazing being, and people just melted and wanted to have what he had. People saw that love of God and wanted to have some of that. But that's different from preaching, where you are kind of lecturing to somebody from a place that you believe is superior, and that your hearer somehow inferior, at least in one sort of way, and it just leads to arrogance on the one side and resistance on the other. Resistance. I mean, nobody wants to get preached to.
Yeah,
Not nowadays.
From a
Not
pulpit.
nowadays.
I'm going to take this personally and personally apply it to my life. I feel like that God has spoken through you today for my benefit. And I think that's a great way. And I'm going to eradicate that word from my vocabulary because it doesn't help me. And it doesn't. And like you said, no one wants to feel like, oh, this guy's lecturing me. Is that what's going on right now? He's trying to sell me religion right here. And it puts you in a whole mind frame that's what you're doing instead of sharing some realization or reading literature together. Sure.
And there's so many, you know, now yoga is so spread in the West and so many teachers are here. There's loads of people looking for teachings, you know, and if they're sincere, they'll find the appropriate community that can share, you know, wisdom that is appropriate for them. So they might come in contact with you or anybody else. So, Bhagavan will send, will bring us together in whatever modalities, reflecting our sincerity. I think ultimately, Raghu, it's
Yeah.
got to be about sincerity. It's got to be about sincerity. You can't convince people theologically.
Mm.
You can, if that you can satisfy their intellect, but ultimately it's sincerity, it's surrender to Bhagavan, then Bhagavan catches the heart. That's the core of bhakti. All this other stuff is, it's not going to last. Just theological intellectuality doesn't, I don't believe, make people devotees, not heart devotees. Only the
Sure.
heart can make a heart devotee.
Right. For those who also perhaps for those who also have that intellect and feel like, oh yeah, now I can be superior with my intellect.
Oh,
But when your heart is
exactly.
there, you see it, even in an intellectual who's got a wide open heart, like yourself. And so we appreciate that. Do you, we should just have him come up here. We should just come up here. We should just do either a day program with you, a big immersion, or a weekend immersion, because, I want more of you in my life. Can that happen?
But you've been saying that for years at Raghu. We can make it happen if you want to make it happen. But I have to
Okay.
be in the country. But yes, it would be a pleasure. I would love to.
Okay. We're gonna figure this out today. And so how else can people like what's your favorite book that you've written that you'd recommend to some of our students? We basically study the Bhagavatam every day. Um,
Okay.
uh,
Bhakti
has been
Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. It's just the Bhakti Yoga book was a sequel to the Yoga Sutra book. So they have the same cover. It's meant to be a set, and it's the teachings that feature yoga. So
hmm,
it's so those are coming out of a yoga tradition or a Jnana tradition, because there's a lot of weird stuff in the Bhagavatam. Weird, I
sure.
don't mean that disrespectfully, but there's stuff that, Hiranyaksha and the cosmology that is maybe not the best thing for an introduction to bhakti. So the Bhakti Yoga book, the tales of yogis. So it has the tales of, Dhruva Maharaj and Bharat Maharaj, the cool stories, the Gana sections, the merchant in the forest, the Sankhya, the Kapila. So basically, it has stories that resonate with the kind of texts
Hmm.
non-ISKCON, non-Gaudiya people are reading out there, Vedanta texts or Patanjali Yoga Sutra text. So there's stories in the Bhagavatam that are good bridges to what's already out there. So the Bhakti Yoga Tales and Teaching is specifically designed for the non-Gaudiya yoga community. I thought very, very carefully for a very long time, after many years of teaching, and that I would say, if your question was about my books,
Your
then
books.
that I would say, yeah, is the thing that was most dear to me, and it piggybacked on the Yoga Sutra, which I never for a minute thought was going to be so successful.
Wow.
Not
Wow.
not
It
for a
is. It's
minute.
the most talked about Yoga Sutras edition out there. Whenever I go to yoga studios, they say, "Oh yeah, Edwin Bryant, well, this is the best one." And I say, "Yes, it
That
is.
came out
Yes,
of
it is."
nowhere. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. These other books, you write these books, the academic books, and then you get a check in the mail once a year for $86. And if you do the math, it's like 1 cent an hour. The amount of, So I thought, okay, Yoga Sutra, it's going to be, sell 500 copies, and okay, it was, I learned a lot about, psychology and about japa, actually, how to do japa.
Mm.
And it just exploded. I just never for a second dreamt it would. So the Bhakti
Unbelievable.
Yoga book then consciously try to cash in on that, on the success of that book. If you look at the cover, they're identical, and it was meant to bring the yoga asana, the Patanjalian community, create a link to the Bhagavata Purana. That was the entire motive and strategic, thinking behind the blue book, the Bhakti Yoga book.
That's great. Okay, that's good. And
And
I think our
what
audience
is
will love that.
your book about? You said you'd written a book.
It's about my journey into bhakti it's called From Punk
Oh,
to
I
Monk.
can. Okay, yeah.
So
It's
it's
a bio.
all my triumphs and failures and life stories and etc. It's
Nice.
entertaining. It's entertaining. Um,
Didn't
but
I
it
write
goes,
something? Didn't I write a book? Didn't I write something for it? A blurb or something?
Yeah,
No.
you did. You did. You wrote a great blurb for it. I appreciate your blurb. Thank you very much. I think
I forgot all about it.
it gives it credibility. And you'll have
Wow.
courses you can study online with you too. I just want to share that because this is a great opportunity. The information age has so much nonsense information out there, and you're adding so much. So can you tell us about your Sadaya course?
Yeah, we just do different, there's the website, and we've done we're doing the 6 schools of philosophy. So we did the Vedanta Sutra, we did the Nyaya Sutra, we've done the Sankhya Karikas, and we're just finishing up the Yoga Sutra. So the next 2 Fridays, and it's free of charge. And then the recordings are put up there. And there's other things like Upanishads and Bhagavata and Gita. And you can just register, and then you just get an email once every few months, announcing the next study, whatever the text is going to be. And all that info is edwinbryant.org.
Edwinbryant.org. Okay, that's fantastic.
Right. So there's links there for the past courses that it can be downloaded, and ongoing one, including Sanskrit. My friends, why not study Sanskrit? Who we got up there? Annie Pepper. Sanskrit. Runa's mom. Come on, mom. Study Sanskrit. It's
I'm
not
Raghunath.
impossible.
I want to study Sanskrit.
Karsten. Is it Karsten? Karsten. It's not Martian. It's not hieroglyphics. It's Indo-European. It's a brother. It's a cousin, a long lost cousin. Lori Pag. It's Sanskrit. So anybody interested, there is an ongoing course.
That's good to know. And you can jump on anytime.
Well, it may be a bit late now, but you can start from the beginning and just do it yourself.
Great.
I learned Sanskrit myself. It's not, it's nice to have a teacher, but my friends, you do not need to have a teacher. You can study, you can do it yourself. And then you can, you will be doing this for years. Once we finish the grammar, we'll start looking at in the Gita and Sanskrit. So join us, and, and don't think you can't do it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I've been telling myself for years, I've got to start Sanskrit. I've got to start Sanskrit. And my 10-year-old just said, I want to learn Sanskrit. Maybe this is our opportunity. Prabhu, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for just the light that you give. It's been a pleasure. Always a pleasure just hearing from you. Going anywhere else? Are you going out where we can see you in person?
Oh, what do you mean? Like, I'm going out in my garden a minute. Am I
going out in your garden? Because we're going to be in your garden waiting for you. Or are you doing any classes or workshops or anything like that we can look for?
Going one. Yoga Sutra every Friday. Yoga Sutra workshop every Friday.
Is that live?
Raghu, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for joining us. Really honored to have him on the show today. I want to thank everybody for joining us live, and all the people out there who listen. Make sure you check out, how do you say the website again?
Edwinbryant.org.
Edwinbryant.org. A deep wealth of spiritual information, a man of integrity, and broad-minded spiritualist, which we need more of nowadays. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. It's a beautiful day for a beautiful day. Let the magic continue to flow, and a big Hari Bol.